The sky above him was nothing like Earth. It shimmered with shades of gold and green, shifting as if alive. Ryan stumbled forward, feeling the strange blue moss sink under his boots with every step. His breathing was heavy, the air sweet but thick, almost like it was trying to slow him down. The forest stretched endlessly around him, trees with glowing leaves and silver bark casting soft light in every direction. He had no memory of walking here, only flashes of the crash, the blinding light, and then waking up alone. His comm device on the wrist blinked red. No signal. He pressed it anyway, hearing nothing but static. His hand tightened on the strap of his small supply bag. Every sound in this place seemed sharper. Far off, something let out a low growl, followed by a strange clicking noise that echoed through the trees. The air carried a faint vibration that made the hair on his neck stand. He turned in slow circles, scanning the surroundings. Above him, massive vines hung like twisted ropes, some glowing faintly, swaying without wind. From time to time, he thought he saw movement between the thick trunks, quick shadows gone before he could focus. His heart pounded harder. A soft rustle to his left made him freeze. He crouched, grabbing a stick, though he knew it was useless against anything larger than a rabbit. The sound came again. Closer. His breath caught when he saw them. They emerged from the mist in silence, tall figures with long limbs and glowing eyes. There were 6 of them, moving with a grace that made them seem like ghosts. They wore fitted garments made of woven silver threads, their hair in shades of white, black, and deep blue, flowing past their shoulders. The soft light from the trees reflected on their skin, which shimmered faintly, almost metallic. Ryan didn't move. His muscles locked, not from fear alone, but from the way they looked at him. They were staring, not with hostility, but with an intense curiosity, as if he were some rare animal. None of them spoke. One tilted her head slowly, her eyes narrowing. Another stepped forward, her gaze fixed on his face. He tried to say something, but his throat felt dry. Hello? His voice cracked in the heavy air. They didn't answer. The tallest one moved closer, stopping only a step away. She was striking, silver hair braided over one shoulder, eyes bright gold in the strange light. Her hand rose slowly, fingers hovering near his cheek. Ryan fought the urge to step back. The tip of her finger brushed against his skin, warm and soft. A sudden murmur passed through the others. He heard a faint click from his comm device as it tried to translate, catching only a broken fragment. Male. The word hit him harder than it should have. Of course he was male, but the way they said it, as if they hadn't seen one in a long time, sent a chill down his spine. He looked from one to another, realizing something that made his stomach tighten. There wasn't a single man among them. One of the women gestured sharply, and 2 more stepped closer. They didn't grab him, but their positioning left no doubt he wasn't going anywhere. He glanced over his shoulder at the path behind him, but the forest was already closing in with its strange, shifting light. They began speaking in quick, flowing words he couldn't follow. The tallest one kept her eyes locked on him, her expression unreadable. She motioned toward the distance, and without warning, they started moving, expecting him to follow. Ryan hesitated, torn between running blindly into the alien forest or staying with the only intelligent beings he had seen here. His gut told him neither choice was safe, but his legs began to move on their own. As they walked, he noticed details, strange markings on their arms, glowing patterns that pulsed faintly like veins of light. The forest sounds shifted around them, the unseen creatures falling silent as the women passed. It felt as if even the land itself respected them. They led him deeper, through a narrow passage between massive root walls. The air grew warmer, the glow of the trees brighter. Soon the moss underfoot turned into woven mats laid across the ground. Ryan realized he was no longer in the wild. He was entering their territory. Dozens more figures appeared ahead, all women, stopping their tasks to stare at him. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Some looked surprised, others wary, but many looked at him with a strange kind of hunger. Ryan's chest tightened. Whatever this place was, he was no longer lost. He was found. And from the way every eye in the tribe was locked on him, he knew his arrival meant something. Something he didn't understand yet. But it was already too late to turn back. The circle of women closed around him, their eyes never leaving his face. Ryan stood in the middle, his pulse racing, feeling like prey surrounded by hunters who didn't need weapons. The tall woman with the silver hair gave a command in her language, and the others stepped aside just enough to let him breathe, but still kept him trapped in the center. Her gaze was sharp, but there was no anger in it, only curiosity and something deeper he couldn't name. She spoke again, her words smooth and melodic, but meaningless to him. His comm device buzzed faintly, trying to process the language. A single word broke through the static, clear enough to send a shiver down his spine. Male. The women murmured among themselves, glancing at him as if discussing what to do next. One of them, with hair black as night and skin that shimmered faintly under the alien light, stepped forward and circled him slowly. She reached out and touched his shoulder, her fingers lingering for a moment, as if testing his strength. Ryan's muscles tensed and she smiled faintly before stepping back. The tall leader motioned toward the distance. Two women moved to his sides, not holding him, but close enough that he knew he had no chance of escape. They began walking, and he had no choice but to follow. The path wound deeper into the forest, where the glowing leaves formed a kind of living tunnel. Strange flowers bloomed along the sides, their petals closing as the women passed, as if in respect. Ryan noticed the silence. No birds, no rustling animals, only the soft sound of bare feet on moss and the distant hum of the glowing trees. After some time, they reached an open area where a massive structure stood. It was made from wood and silver threads woven into walls that caught the light and shimmered. In the center was an entrance covered with a curtain of beads carved from crystal-like stones. The women paused at the edge, and the tall leader gestured for him to go inside. Ryan hesitated, glancing back at the group. Their stares told him he wouldn't be leaving until he did what they wanted. Taking a slow breath, he pushed the beads aside and stepped in. The inside was warmer, lit by glowing stones placed in ornate stands. The air carried a scent of sweet fruit and something floral, almost intoxicating. At the far end sat a woman unlike any he had seen yet. She was taller than the others, her skin shimmering with a mix of gold and silver tones, her hair flowing like molten light over her shoulders. A crown of living vines, blooming with tiny glowing flowers, rested on her head. Her eyes locked on him the moment he entered. The tall leader spoke to her in a respectful tone, bowing slightly. The crowned woman, clearly the queen, listened in silence, her eyes never leaving him. She rose gracefully, every movement slow and deliberate, and approached. When she was close enough, she studied his face as though reading a story in his expression. Finally, she spoke. Her voice was rich and smooth, the words unfamiliar but carrying authority. Ryan's comm device crackled again, catching more this time. Rare. Ours. Last. She reached out, touching his chin lightly, tilting his head up so she could see him better. Male, she said herself, and now he understood. The word was not just a description. It was a declaration. The queen stepped back and spoke to the others. The tall leader turned to him, her golden eyes glinting. Through the device, the translation came, broken but clear enough. You will come. You will be safe. You will belong to us. Belong. The word made his stomach twist. He wanted to ask what that meant, but he knew they didn't understand him. Two younger women entered, carrying a tray with a strange fruit split open, revealing soft, glowing flesh. They offered it to him, waiting. His instincts screamed at him not to eat, but the queen's eyes were on him, and refusing felt dangerous. He took a bite. The taste exploded on his tongue, sweet, warm, almost like it carried energy. The women watching murmured in approval. After he finished, the queen gestured for him to sit on a woven mat near her. She spoke again, and the comm device caught fragments. No man, many years, our people, fading. Ryan's mind raced. No man in years, a tribe made entirely of women? He glanced around, noticing the way every woman in the room was watching him, not with hostility, but with an intensity that made him uneasy. The queen smiled, a slow, deliberate curve of her lips, and spoke one last sentence before turning away. The device hummed and translated in a low voice. He is the gift the stars have sent. Ryan's chest tightened. He had no idea what they wanted from him, but one thing was certain. He wasn't just a visitor here. He was something much more, and he wasn't sure if that was a blessing or a trap. The walk to the queen's grand tent felt longer than it should. Ryan's steps sank into the soft, woven mats that stretched across the ground, each one patterned with strange symbols. The women flanked him closely, their presence silent but heavy, like guards escorting a prisoner. The tall leader stayed a few paces ahead, her silver braids swaying as she moved. Every time he glanced at the women beside him, they were already looking at him, their expressions unreadable. The tent itself was enormous, supported by carved wooden beams and draped in shimmering silver fabric that caught the light of the glowing stones. Two women stood at the entrance, each holding a staff decorated with bone charms and feathers from creatures Ryan had never seen. When they saw him, their eyes widened, and one of them whispered something quickly to the other. Inside, the air was warmer and heavy with the smell of flowers and something sweet, almost like honey. The floor was covered in layered rugs, and in the center sat the queen on a raised seat woven from dark wood and silver vines. She looked even more imposing up close, her eyes reflecting the glow around her. Her crown of living vines shifted gently, the tiny flowers blooming and closing as if reacting to her mood. The tall leader bowed deeply before speaking. Her voice was low, respectful, but carried a hint of excitement. Ryan didn't understand the words, but the way she kept gesturing to him made his skin prickle. The queen's gaze never left him, studying every movement he made. When the leader finished, the queen leaned forward slightly, resting her chin on her hand. She said something in her deep, calm voice, and his comm device buzzed faintly, picking up fragments. Years, no men, last hope. Ryan swallowed hard. The queen rose from her seat with slow grace and stepped down, her height making her almost eye level with him. She walked a slow circle around him, her eyes scanning him like she was inspecting a rare artifact. Her hand reached out and touched his shoulder. He forced himself not to flinch. Her lips curved into a faint smile. She spoke again, and this time the device gave him a full sentence. "The stars have given you to us." The women behind him murmured with approval. Ryan felt the weight of every gaze in the room. He didn't know what being given meant here, right? But the way they looked at him made it feel like his fate was already decided. The queen gestured, and a woman stepped forward carrying a long, folded cloth. She knelt and spread it out before him. It was a robe, woven with intricate designs of gold and silver thread. The queen motioned for him to put it on. Ryan hesitated, glancing at the leader, but she only raised her chin, waiting. He slid the robe over his shoulders. The fabric was smooth and warm, almost alive, and it clung lightly to his skin. When he was dressed, the queen gave a sharp command. The leader took his arm, guiding him toward another section of the tent. There was a low table there with plates of glowing fruit, spiced meat, and steaming bowls of something that smelled rich and earthy. Ryan sat, and two women knelt beside him, one pouring a drink into a carved glass, the other placing food before him. They didn't take their eyes off him, their movements slow and deliberate. The queen sat opposite him, resting her hands in her lap. "You will eat," the device translated from her voice. "You will grow strong. Our people will live." Ryan's fingers tightened on the edge of the table. He wanted to ask what she meant, but the language barrier hung between them like a wall. Still, her eyes said enough. She had plans for him, and they didn't involve letting him leave. He ate slowly, tasting each strange food. Some were sweet and crisp, others spicy enough to burn his tongue. Every time he took a bite, the women exchanged small, satisfied smiles. After the meal, the queen stood again. She spoke softly, almost like a chant, and the women in the tent began to hum in low unison. The sound was deep and rhythmic, vibrating in the floor beneath him. It wasn't a song. It was something older, heavier. The device couldn't translate the words, only giving him two fragments. "Welcome, destiny." The hum faded, and the queen's voice came once more. "Tonight you will rest," the device said. "Tomorrow you will begin." Begin what? Ryan wanted to demand answers, but the leader was already taking his arm, guiding him toward the exit. The other women moved aside, their eyes following him until he stepped back into the cooler night air. The glowing forest surrounded the village, silent except for the faint hum of distant creatures. Ryan's new robe caught the light as he walked, marking him clearly to anyone watching. He realized he was no longer just a stranger here. He was something far more important. And whatever tomorrow held, he wasn't sure if it would be survival or surrender. The tent they led him to was smaller than the queen's, but still larger than anything he had seen in the village. The walls were made from the same shimmering fabric, and the floor was covered in thick woven mats. A bed of soft furs sat in the corner, glowing stones placed around it for warmth. Ryan stepped inside slowly, his eyes scanning for anything that might give him a sense of safety. There was none. Two women followed him in, carrying trays of food and water. They placed them neatly on a low table before turning to face him. Neither spoke. They simply watched him for a long moment, as if memorizing his face, before bowing slightly and leaving. The flap closed behind them, and the silence felt heavy. Ryan sat on the furs, his mind racing. He thought about Earth, about his team, about the crash. If they had survived, would they even know where he was? The comm device on his wrist still blinked red. No signal. No rescue. He was alone. Outside, faint voices drifted through the night air. He could hear the soft rhythm of drums somewhere in the village, slow and steady like a heartbeat. Every so often, footsteps passed by his tent, stopping for a moment before moving on. It felt like they were keeping watch, not to protect him, but to make sure he didn't leave. Hours passed, and the glow of the stones dimmed slightly, signaling that night had fully settled in. Ryan lay on the bed, staring at the fabric ceiling. That's when he heard it. The sound of the flap shifting slightly, slow and careful. He sat up. A figure slipped inside, moving silently. She was younger than most of the women he'd seen, her hair tied back, her eyes bright in the low light. She carried no weapon. Instead, she held a small bundle wrapped in cloth. Without a word, she came closer and knelt beside him. She opened the bundle, revealing a bowl filled with small, glowing berries. She offered it to him, her voice soft. The comm device caught fragments. Eat, strength, important. Ryan didn't move to take them. "What do you want from me?" he asked, knowing she might not understand. She tilted her head slightly, as if hearing the tone even if not the words. She pointed toward her chest, then toward the village beyond the tent. Her voice was quiet, but the device picked up just enough. "Many want. Queen says no. Not safe." The meaning sank in slowly. She was warning him. The queen had ordered no one to touch him without permission, but others might not obey. Before he could speak, she placed the berries in his hands and stood. Her eyes lingered on his for a moment longer, a mixture of caution and something unspoken. Then she slipped back out into the night. Ryan stared at the berries, their soft glow casting light over his fingers. He didn't know if they were a gift, a bribe, or a silent plea. The rest of the night passed in uneasy silence, broken only by distant drums. Sleep came in short, restless bursts, and each time he woke, he thought he saw movement just beyond the tent flap. When the first pale light of dawn filtered through the fabric, a sharp knock at the entrance pulled him fully awake. The tall leader entered, her silver braid catching the light. She motioned for him to follow. They walked through the village, now bustling with activity. Women carried baskets, sharpened tools, and wove new fabrics. Yet everywhere he passed, the conversation stopped and eyes turned toward him. Some were curious, others calculating. A few were openly intense, as if they were memorizing every step he took. The leader brought him to a wide, open clearing near the edge of the village. The ground was bare here, the air warmer. At the center stood a carved stone pillar, its surface covered in strange symbols. Around it, several women stood in a loose circle, their eyes fixed on him. The queen was there too, wearing a robe that shimmered in gold light. She stepped forward and spoke, her voice carrying clearly. The comm device hummed, "Today you will show your strength." Ryan's jaw tightened. Strength for what? But the queen simply gestured. From behind the pillar, a massive creature was led out, chained and snarling. Its body was covered in thick armor-like scales, and 4 tusks curved from its jaw. The ground shook as it stomped forward, eyes locked on him. The queen's voice came again. "If you can face it, you can stay. If not, you will be sent beyond the forest." The women around the clearing stepped back, giving the creature room. Ryan felt his heartbeat pounding in his ears. No weapon, no armor, just him. The beast roared, the sound rattling his chest. It lunged forward, the chain snapping taut. Ryan moved to the side, dodging by inches. He could feel the heat of its breath as it passed. He watched its movements carefully, noticing how the chain pulled at its neck when it lunged too far. Timing would be everything. He waited, baiting it into another charge. This time he sidestepped faster, wrapping the chain around a carved post. The creature roared in frustration, pulling harder. Ryan yanked the chain again, forcing it to twist. With a final pull, the chain locked against itself, trapping the creature's head close to the ground. It thrashed, but it couldn't reach him. Silence fell over the clearing. Then the women began to murmur, their voices rising into cheers. The queen's lips curved into a smile. Ryan stood there, breathing hard, sweat running down his neck. He didn't feel like a victor. He felt like a man who had just stepped one step deeper into a world that wouldn't let him go. The queen's smile lingered as the cheers of the tribe echoed across the clearing. Ryan stood still, catching his breath, his eyes shifting from the chained beast to the crowd. Dozens of women stared at him now with a new kind of expression. No longer just curiosity, but something sharper, like approval mixed with desire. He could feel their eyes on him as if they were weighing his worth, deciding where he belonged in their world. The queen raised her hand, and the voices around them fell silent. She stepped toward him, her golden robe catching the early sunlight. Her voice was calm but carried authority, and the comm device translated just enough. "You are strong. You stay." The tall leader approached and placed a heavy hand on his shoulder, guiding him away from the clearing. The crowd parted as he walked through, though many of the women reached out to brush their fingers against his robe or arm as he passed. Each touch made his skin tense, not from fear, but from the strange intensity behind their eyes. They led him back toward the center of the village, where the air smelled of fresh cooking and the sound of weaving looms filled the space. Ryan noticed how different their expressions were now, less cautious, more open. A few younger women whispered to each other, their laughter quick and light when he glanced their way. The leader brought him to a long table covered with food, steaming bowls of root stew, platters of sliced glowing fruit, and roasted meat seasoned with a sharp, spicy scent. She gestured for him to sit, and several women gathered around, some serving him directly while others simply stood watching. Ryan ate slowly, his eyes darting between the faces around him. Each time he lifted his cup, someone stepped forward to refill it before it was even empty. The attention was overwhelming. On Earth, he had never been the center of anyone's world. Here, every small movement he made seemed to matter. Halfway through the meal, the young woman from the night before appeared. She carried no food this time, only a small pouch tied at her waist. She moved closer until she was beside him, her voice low. The device caught faint words. "Be careful. Not all follow Queen. Some want you." He froze mid-bite. Her eyes flicked toward a group of women standing near the edge of the gathering, their gazes locked on him. They didn't look friendly. One of them, tall with deep red markings across her arms, narrowed her eyes and spoke something to her companions, who smirked in response. The young woman placed a hand on his arm for a moment, then stepped back and disappeared into the crowd. The meal ended with the queen arriving, flanked by 2 guards. She addressed the tribe, her voice ringing out clearly. The device translated pieces, "He will be under my protection. None may touch him without my word. He belongs to the queen." The crowd murmured, and Ryan noticed that not all the faces looked happy. Some were defiant, others thoughtful. The tension under the surface was hard to miss. After the announcement, the queen gestured for him to follow her. They walked toward a large structure near the edge of the village, guarded by tall poles decorated with animal bones and feathers. Inside, the air was cooler, and the walls were lined with intricate carvings. The queen stopped before a low stone platform and turned to him. Her words were slow, deliberate. "This is the house of trials," the device translated. "You faced one today. Others will come. If you succeed, you will live well here. If you fail, you will not leave alive." Ryan met her gaze, his voice steady. "And if I want to leave now?" The queen's lips curved in a smile that wasn't warm. "The forest will take you before the sun sets. Only here do you live." She stepped closer, her hand brushing the edge of his robe. "And only here will you be needed." Her tone left little doubt about what she meant. Before he could answer, she turned and signaled for the leader to take him back. As they walked, Ryan noticed the eyes following him again, some filled with interest, others with open challenge. The young woman's warning echoed in his head. Not all follow the queen. That night, the village felt different. The usual hum of conversation was replaced by an uneasy quiet. Shadows moved between the tents, and more than once Ryan heard footsteps pause outside his own. He sat on the bed of furs, the glow stones casting long, shifting shapes across the walls. When the flap moved again, it wasn't the young woman this time. A tall figure stepped inside, one of the women with red markings on her arms. She didn't speak. She simply stared at him, her eyes hard, before whispering something too fast for the device to catch. Then she left as silently as she had come. Ryan exhaled slowly, his mind racing. The queen might have claimed him, but the look in that woman's eyes told him the truth. Being claimed didn't mean he was safe. It meant he was in the middle of something far more dangerous than he had imagined. The next morning came with the sound of drums. They were faster now, sharper than the slow heartbeat rhythm he had heard on his first night. Ryan sat up quickly, already sensing the air in the village felt different. Outside, voices rose and fell in heated tones, though he couldn't understand the words. The tent flap opened and the tall leader entered. Her silver braids swung over her shoulder as she looked at him with unreadable eyes. She gestured for him to get up. "The queen calls," the comm device translated. He followed her out, the cool morning air brushing against his skin. The village was busy, but not in the calm way it had been before. Groups of women stood in clusters, speaking in low voices, glancing at him when they thought he wasn't looking. A few didn't bother to hide their stares. The leader brought him back to the queen's tent. The guards stepped aside, but he noticed they were different from before. Bigger, more heavily armed, with sharp, curved blades strapped to their backs. Inside, the queen sat on her raised seat, but her posture was tense. When he approached, she leaned forward slightly. Her voice was low but firm. "Some do not obey," the device translated. "They want you for themselves." Ryan's jaw tightened. "I've already been warned." The queen's eyes narrowed at that, but she didn't question him. Instead, she stood and walked toward a table where several objects were laid out: thin metal rods, small crystal stones, and a curved blade. She picked up one of the stones and placed it in his hand. It was warm, pulsing faintly. "This will mark you," the translation said. "The tribe will see it. They will know you are mine." He turned the stone in his palm, feeling the strange heat seep into his skin. "And if I don't want to be marked?" The queen stepped closer, her presence filling the space between them. "Then you will be taken by others, and I will not protect you." He didn't answer, but his silence seemed enough. She gestured to one of the guards, who took the stone and pressed it against the inside of his wrist. It burned, not painfully, but deep, like the heat was sinking under his skin. When the guard stepped back, a faint glowing mark was left there, a twisting shape like two interlocked circles. The queen looked satisfied. "Now you are safe," the device said. But Ryan wasn't convinced. After the marking, the leader took him outside, away from the queen's tent. They walked toward the forest's edge, where a group of younger women were training. They used long spears tipped with sharpened bone, moving in precise formations. When they noticed Ryan, some slowed their movements, staring openly. The leader brought him to the center of the group and handed him a short spear. "You will learn to fight," she said through the device. The training was grueling. The spear felt awkward in his hands, and the alien fighting style was unlike anything he'd seen. The women moved with quick, fluid strikes, their footwork precise. When he failed to match their pace, they didn't hide their frustration. One of them, the tall, red-marked woman who had entered his tent the night before, smirked every time he stumbled. By midday, sweat dripped down his back, and his arms ached from holding the weapon. But he began to notice patterns, how their strikes always followed a rhythm, how their footwork could be anticipated. Slowly, he adapted, managing to land a clean deflection against one of the younger warriors. That small victory didn't go unnoticed. A ripple of murmurs passed through the group, and even the red-marked woman raised an eyebrow. When the training ended, the leader motioned for him to follow her back toward the village. But as they passed between two storage huts, Ryan caught movement from the corner of his eye. The young woman who had warned him before stepped out from the shadows, her eyes darting to the leader, then back to him. She moved close enough to whisper, "Tonight, they will come." Before he could ask who, she was gone again, slipping behind one of the huts. The leader didn't seem to notice, or maybe she pretended not to. She brought him back to his tent and left without a word. Ryan paced for a while, the warning echoing in his head. If someone was planning to come for him tonight, he had no idea how many or what they intended. The queen's mark on his wrist felt heavier now, like it might not be enough to stop them. When night fell, the village quieted quickly. The glowstones long shadows across the mats inside his tent. He stayed awake, listening. At first, there was only the distant hum of the forest. Then, soft footsteps, several of them, circling his tent. The flap shifted and 3 figures slipped inside. The red-marked woman was in front, her eyes glinting in the dim light. She didn't speak. She didn't have to. The 2 behind her moved closer, their expressions hungry, determined. Ryan's muscles tensed as he realized this was no greeting. They hadn't come to talk. They had come to take him. The red-marked woman stepped closer, her shadow stretching across the furs. Her eyes locked on Ryan's, sharp and challenging, while the 2 women behind her moved to block the exit. The air in the tent grew heavy, thick with an unspoken tension. Ryan could hear the faint rustle of the tent walls as the wind outside shifted, but inside, everything was still. She spoke in a low, deliberate tone. The comm device picked up only fragments. "Queen cannot. You are not hers. We take now." Ryan's pulse quickened. He took a step back until his heel touched the bed of furs. "I'm not going anywhere," he said, his voice steady even though his chest was tight. The woman's lips curled into a smirk, as if she had been expecting that answer. She glanced at the others, and they moved forward. One reached for his arm, her grip surprisingly strong, while the other stepped to his side, trying to corner him. Ryan twisted, breaking free from the first woman's grasp, and sidestepped quickly. He remembered the spear training from earlier, the rhythm of movements, the timing of steps. His body reacted faster than his thoughts, using the narrow space to his advantage. He grabbed the edge of a wooden support pole in the tent and swung around it, putting himself behind them. The red-marked woman turned sharply, clearly not used to prey fighting back. She lunged, but Ryan sidestepped again, forcing her to collide with the other woman. They stumbled, giving him a brief opening. He didn't waste it. He dove for the tent flap, pushing it aside and rushing into the cool night air. The village was quiet, but not empty. 2 figures were approaching from the far side, their faces tense. Ryan recognized one instantly, the young woman who had warned him before. She ran toward him, speaking quickly. "This way," the comm device translated. Without hesitation, he followed her between 2 huts, the red-marked woman's furious shout echoing behind them. They weaved through narrow paths, avoiding the main walkways. The glowing stones placed throughout the village cast shifting shadows, making it hard to tell if anyone was following. The young woman led him to a small, low structure near the edge of the village. Its walls were covered in woven mats, and the entrance was barely wide enough for him to slip through. Inside, the air was cool and damp. It smelled faintly of herbs. She motioned for him to sit on a pile of furs in the corner. "Here they won't look," she said softly, her eyes scanning the entrance. Ryan caught his breath, his voice low. "Why are you helping me?" She hesitated, then sat across from him. "Queen is not wrong, but she cannot protect you all the time. Many think you are a prize. They will fight for you. Some will kill for you." Her words made his stomach twist. "And you? What do you want?" She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she reached into her pouch and pulled out a small, curved blade. She placed it in his hands. "For when I'm not here." Ryan studied the weapon. It was light, the handle wrapped in soft leather. He gripped it tightly, feeling the weight of her trust and the danger around him. They stayed in the small shelter for what felt like hours. Outside, the sound of footsteps passed several times, followed by muffled voices. Once, the flap moved slightly, and Ryan's hand tightened on the blade, but the shadow moved on without entering. When the first faint light of dawn touched the sky, the young woman stood. "It is safe now, but the queen will know what happened. She will be angry." Ryan followed her back through the quiet village. The morning fires were just being lit, and the air smelled of smoke and roasting roots. A few women noticed them, their eyes narrowing, whispers already beginning to spread. By the time they reached the queen's tent, 2 guards were waiting. They looked at Ryan, then at the young woman, before motioning for him to enter. Inside, the queen sat rigid on her seat, her crown of living vines blooming and closing in quick pulses as if reflecting her mood. "You were attacked," she said through the device, her voice cold. "I gave my word you were mine. They defied me." Ryan stayed silent, watching her expression. The queen rose and walked toward him, stopping only a breath away. This will not happen again, but you must choose: stay close to me, under my watch always, or walk into the forest and take your chances. Her eyes burned with a challenge, but also something else: possession. Ryan knew the forest was death. Staying with her meant safety, but also chains he couldn't see yet. After a long moment, he nodded once. "I'll stay." The queen's lips curved into a slow smile. She turned to the guards. Then, from this moment, the translation came: "No one touches him without my hand, and those who tried will not see another night." Ryan felt a chill. Outside, the village began to stir fully, unaware of what the queen had just promised. He glanced at the young woman who had saved him. Her face gave nothing away, but her eyes held the same warning as before. He had survived the night, but it was clear now: this was only the beginning.